Okay. So hi.
Okay then.
Mhm. To start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are right now?
My name is John Smolowe, and I'm in Menlo Park, California.
Cool. Just noticing, is that a jaguar behind you, beside you?
I didn't quite hear you.
Is that a jaguar behind you or beside you?
The in yellow,
Ah, okay. Has more nose.
that
Yes.
is a ceramic dog by the sculptor Gary Deanan of Sacramento.
Okay. Interesting.
I do have some jaguars around. Is that guy a jaguar? That guy's probably a jaguar. I don't know if you can see him up there. There's a jaguar up there.
Oh, yeah, I can actually. Interesting. Sorry, just curiosity. So the first question that I have for you is actually, who are you as a human being? And that can be qualities about yourself or values, passions, whatever's making you laugh. Go ahead.
Do you know who Jim Bugental was?
I don't actually.
Jim Bugental was a psychologist and a protege of Rollo May, wrote a number of books on existential psychotherapy. Was sort of the founder of one or two American humanistic psychology organizations and institutes and journals. And when I was a resident, psychiatry resident at Stanford, he happened to be teaching there for, I guess, 2 years with Irv Yalom. And one of the exercises that Jim liked to do was, who are you? And then when you give an answer, he says, yes, and who are you? And he could do that for an hour straight.
Yeah, I just use it as a teaser. We don't actually do this for the whole hour.
No,
So
but
what happened?
it's
What comes
an
up for you?
interesting question that can
Mhm.
get one considering what it means to be a person on various levels.
Mhm.
So would you care to define that, a level on which to answer?
I generally just let people go where it takes them. In that sense, some people talk about roles, some people talk about passions or sort of the central values that run through different aspects of their lives. Whatever you're interested in right now, I guess.
I'm really not sure where to start. I'm a psychiatrist in private practice. I'm married. My wife's also a psychiatrist. I have 2 kids and 2 grandkids. I like to read novels and play electric guitar and go to tropical islands.
Okay.
Sometimes I go to meditation retreats.
Okay. So I'm also
I kind of,
curious. Mhm.
in terms of today, who I am is kind of missing Cindy.
Mhm.
I wish I had taken more advantage of staying in touch with her.
Mhm. Yeah, I only met Cindy through email just early this year, but she was very generous and just wanted me to meet everybody. And she said, before I die, we have to have some conversations.
Yeah.
So we did. So a little bit more about yourself. I'm wondering, perhaps beyond this immediate moment, what comes to mind as some events in your life or a set of circumstances that you would say have shaped you in some way?
What's funny is that you ask, who are you and what is yourself? And it makes me think Buddhist, like, well, is there a self?
That's a ridiculous question, really.
Ask it again, please.
The second one or the existential one?
Whichever you wish.
Well, I was curious about some piece of context, an event or some circumstances in your life, which you would say have been significant in shaping you, or not defining, but helping you figure out who you are.
I don't know. I mean, I have a fairly straightforward life. I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to day prep school. I went to Yale. I went to psychiatry residency. I went into private practice. I got married. I had kids. So I didn't discover something and make some big shift along the way.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of one foot in front of the other. An anecdote that comes to mind was in my third year of medical school. We had we finished all the required courses in 2.5 years, and we had a relatively elective final 18 months with a concentration, and I was one of the 10 or so behavioral science people who chose behavioral science. As part of that, you had several advisors, but one of them was an advisor with whom to do a project. And you also had to do a thesis, kind of a mini dissertation. So that was a different advisor, was another cool guy. But anyway, I met with a fellow named Dan Levinson, who was also a very prominent psychologist at the time. And I went and sat down with him. I didn't really know him. He said, well, we have to pick some kind of project for you. What's been the most fun for you in the first 2.5 years of medical school? And I said, well, the Tavistock group we had as part of the psychiatry clerkship was the most interesting fun. And he said, well, why don't you, Yale has a lot of group training sequences. Hello, dog, a dog of which you spoke. Why don't you take all of them and come back here every week and tell me how it's going? So I did the group therapy or group training sequence in psychiatry, psychology, nursing, and administrative sciences and public health over the next year and a half. And that's how I sort of ran into Gestalt therapy the first time, which I don't know that was the most significant event of my life, but it is connected to our talking today. Mm-hmm. So I think that conversation with Dan was pretty important.
And the question from the eminent psychologist was, what was the most fun?
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty good guiding principle, I guess.
Oh, I ask people that all the time.
Nice. Right. So would you say that he is one of the people who would have influenced or impacted your life significantly, or does someone else also come to mind?
Oh, there's a bunch of people.
Yeah, it could be from any aspect of your life. Just a little bit about how those relationships have helped shape you.
Well, Jack Downing was certainly an important figure or mentor. Have you run into people talking about Jack?
Heard the name? Yes.
Yeah. He and Cindy were two of the four founders of the Gestalt Institute of San Francisco in the early 70s. And Jack was also a psychiatrist, and he lived in Palo Alto at that time, and he taught at the Gestalt Institute. And I had one quarter with him as the trainer, and then I just met him. But I asked if he would, if the Institute would let him do a quarter down in Palo Alto and let me grab a bunch of Stanford people to attend, and they might come just for one quarter rather than for the whole 3 years. So we did that, and Jack was a very interesting guy because in many ways, but one of them was he liked to try new things. He told me once that he thought that perhaps he was a pioneer and I was a settler. It was not to insult me, but more of a reassurance that he kept trying new things. And one of the new things he was trying was he became a Rolfer. He was one of the first people to study without a Rolf. So I had 10 to 12 sessions with Jack and Rolfing. I'd have lunch with him. I don't know, he was very, I don't know, he liked me, which was nice. I mean, that was not obvious from most of my professors, undergraduate and medical school, but he was not afraid to like somebody openly. And I liked being with him and admired him. He also, I don't know how to describe it, was irreverent, I guess. He was not at all a cookbook Gestalt type of person. You couldn't predict what he was going to do. He'd bring in some adventure or exercise for everybody to try out, which we all enjoyed. We all went down to his house in Big Sur for a long weekend as part of that quarter, which was very interesting and fun. Went down to his house in Big Sur again for a Korean Buddhist meditation weekend. So that was fun. I would say Jack Kornfield has also been very influential. Do you know Jack or of Jack? He teaches Vipassana meditation.
Again, I think I have heard the name, but I don't know much beyond that.
Jack and his colleague Joseph Goldstein, well, there are two schools of mindfulness meditation, and a fellow named Goenka, an Asian fellow named teacher named Goenka started one of them, and Joseph and Jack started the other. Most of the mindfulness that we see all around us came through people Joseph and Jack taught. So I went to the first 10-day retreat they gave in the United States, and then I went to a 10-day retreat every April in Southern California for the next 40 years. So I've heard of a lot of talks by Jack in that time. So he's been a big influence.
How so?
I think there's two ways. One is that just what he says seems right about the way the world works, about how to pay attention to yourself, how to observe yourself, and the combination of watching yourself and being kind as much as you can.
Hmm.
And then his style of it is different than most teachers in that he's quite available and talks a lot about himself and his wife and his ex-wife and his daughter and his grandkid, and he tells a lot of anecdotes, as well as having a great repertoire of books and sayings that he quotes from. He's a very good speaker. But also, I like the way he's natural and unpretentious.
Hmm.
So, which I try
I'm
to.
just thinking that the 40 years of returning to a particular practice, there must be something very strong for you there to draw you back.
What did you say was strong?
There must be something strong in that for you, like some kind of a pull.
I'm sorry, what, some kind of
pull, like a draw for you?
Seems like a good idea at the time.
So you just do it for 40 years?
Yeah. Well, they often ask you, why have you come? And the answer is always because I said last year that I would. And so even though I don't feel like it, I'd rather go to the beach. I know I will feel good about it by the end, which is pretty much always the experience.
Okay. So I'm curious about other aspects of yourself as well. You don't have to say the number if that matters to you, but I'm curious how you are experiencing this point in life in terms of your age and the aging process.
Oh, I'm 73. I don't mind saying that. Most of the time, I don't pay any attention to it. I don't really change anything. So far, I haven't had to change anything that I do other than I run slower. I have a wonderful internist, a guy we found about 3 years ago, and I actually saw him yesterday, and I was saying to him that it's a bit like whack-a-mole in your 70s, that you find one abnormal test and you pursue it and it turns out to be okay, and then that one's done, and then some other test turns out to be abnormal and you have to pursue that. So that's mostly annoying. I was a little frightened yesterday in that I have a slightly abnormal lung CT, and I have to make an appointment with a pulmonologist, and I don't know how serious it is. So I don't remember being frightened about my health when I was younger.
Mm. That's true. I think I mean, for some, they would say ignorance is bliss, right? But not being quite so aware of mortality at a younger age is often part of that, right? I don't ask everyone, but I mean, just because Cindy is the one who specifically recommended that I talk with you when you mentioned her just now, along with aging sort of comes end of life. And I wonder how you conceive that part or how you feel about it.
That's one thing about doing Buddhist meditation retreats is I generally don't. I mean, I just have my experience. So my experience is thinking, this woman, Molly Roll, I hadn't run into her before, but she's collecting information for some publication, Gestalt publication she works on. She's collecting information about Cindy, and she sent me an email this morning saying she hasn't been able to find any relatives of Cindy, didn't know any relatives of Cindy. And the answer is no, but can I say why the fuck on
Oh yeah.
audio? Okay, so I'm like, why the fuck don't I know about Cindy's relatives? I didn't take the time to ask her. Over, you know, I knew her for 45 years, and I didn't take the time to ask her that. I know a little bit about her boyfriend, but it's a shame that I didn't take that opportunity, and now I don't have it.
Mm.
And I think, oh, if I have problems with my lungs, maybe I have to tell my kids what all this art is, so they get to figure out whether they want to keep it or not. At least I know what it is.
Mm.
Or should I walk around here with them, or should I make a video, or should I make up a slideshow or something like that? That's how I experience it.
I know Cindy said to another friend in an email, she said, oh my God, it's so much work to die, just getting everything put in order.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm also wondering how you experience or understand yourself in terms of gender or as a man.
Beats me. I sort of take it for granted.
Mhm.
I don't think about it much.
Yeah, I mean, some people have 3 degrees in gender studies, so it can be a very different focus for some people.
Well, I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is in terms of attractions. I mean, I look at you and you're interviewing me, and I think, gee, she's kind of pretty. And that, I don't know, it's sort of a gendered thing to do, but maybe women do the same thing. I don't know.
I don't know. This is more sort of an orientation, I guess, but yeah. Okay. So how do you understand yourself socially in terms of power and privilege in your life?
Again, I don't. It's more that I can see and have concern for other people who don't have what I have. I mean, I have a nice house in a hard to get neighborhood in California, and I'm aware that lots of other people can't live here. But I don't really walk around my yard and think I'm special. It's I walk around and go, hey, look at that new rose opening today. Should I take a picture of it and post it on Facebook?
Mhm.
It comes up more that one of my patients whom I like a lot says, you don't understand what it's like to be Asian American and to be scared and to have people look down on you, and a woman besides. And I'm like, well, is that, to what extent is that fair of her to say? And to what extent could she be more vulnerable rather than angry? And do I take that just as she says it and be comforting and sympathetic, or do I wonder there are other ways to approach that? It comes up more that way.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, just when you said, your life path includes, trips through Yale and things like that, that's not everybody's life path for sure.
Yeah, but it is, so that's where I am. I met my wife at Yale, my daughter went to Yale, my son went to Stanford. I go to parties at, I mean, we sit out by the pool at my daughter's house in Los Angeles, and there's 15 people there. Her husband went to Yale Drama School. She went to Yale Law School, both of them at Yale College. And we sit there and there's 15 people from Yale. They're all from Yale, but they're not pretentious. It's more, it's fun to talk to them because they're all really smart and they're all really artistic and they're all really aware politically. So they'll be, 2 years ago, we were all talking about Bernie, and they're talking about this director and that producer, and whatever. It's a smart, cultured bunch of people. It's such a delight. And my daughter Laura's friends from Yale, most of the friends she still has from Yale were in her singing group, her a cappella singing group. And I know all of them from having gone flown back there for 2 concerts a year. So I know all these people from Yale, but they're not politicians or financiers. They're TV writers. And one of our best friends is a musician in Austin. One of my best friend actually from Yale, is a drummer in Austin. So it's a certain kind of privilege. It's like alongside of the stereotype. I've always been my mother wanted me, a nice Jewish boy, be a doctor, but I'll be a doctor, but I'll be a psychiatrist.
Yeah, kind of, right, Mom?
Right, yeah. And then I'll be a psychiatrist, but while you're studying at that time psychoanalysis, I'll go study Gestalt therapy. And now it's, well, you're all prescribing medication, I'm doing therapy. We called ourselves, at the time I was in college and medical school, counterculture. So I still feel that way.
Okay. And how active or interested are you in current terms about issues like around social justice and equity and things like that? Or what aspect is counterculture that you kind of still hold?
Well, I certainly marched in demonstrations and acted as medic for marches on Washington and Free Bobby Seale. I don't know if you saw the trial of Chicago 7, but that was us supporting them. So that was my time, the people who were out there demonstrating, supporting them, and comparable people. Marching in defense of the Black Panthers and stuff. Am I doing that much now? Not really. I'm contributing to Democrats and occasionally writing challenging emails to columnists, writing stupid things.
No, it's not meant to be like an exam where you have to prove some kind of level. I'm just curious. Yeah, no, that's fair. So I would switch a little bit now. You mentioned how you found Gestalt, which, like you said, is sort of our meeting point right now. So I'm wondering, what did you find in Gestalt when you started going to those sessions, those meetings, and coming into that group?
You mean when I went to the Gestalt Institute?
Whenever you would say that you came into Gestalt.
Well, it started that they showed the whole Department of Psychiatry in an auditorium of about 500 people, the 3 Forms of Psychotherapy film with Fritz and Albert Ellis and Carl Rogers.
And Gloria.
And Gloria. And I felt, as Gloria did, that, well, Fritz was the most fun of most enlivening of all those. And I must have told somebody that I thought that was cool because as a medical student interested in psychiatry, you get a couple of patients, and they gave me as my supervisor one of the 2 or 3 Gestalt therapists in New Haven. So I think that film and my supervisor were the first introduction. What comes by, again, he was very personable. I've had the good fortune to have 8 or 10 very warm, personable mentors. The thing that comes to mind about him was that we must have been meeting somewhere 11, 12 or 1, and we'd get together and he'd bring 2 sandwiches. And I would say, let me pay you. And he said, no, you just treat somebody when you're in my position, you treat them. And I thought, well, that's cool, isn't it? So
supervision and a sandwich. There you go.
Yeah. In terms of going to the Gestalt Institute, doing more of it, going to the Gestalt Institute, I was introduced to that and to Vipassana through my friend Joan Wager. I don't know whether you have run into Joan, as she's somebody you could talk to as well, because she's a therapist in Berkeley of my age who's also at the Gestalt Institute at the same time. She was like 1/4 ahead of me. And I had known her for a couple of years. And she said, I'm going to this Gestalt Institute place. You should come, you'll like it. I said, okay. And she also said, I went to this meditation retreat, and I think what she said was, it's the closest thing to LSD without taking LSD. So you should go, it's really interesting. So I went to my first meditation retreat I was scared to go, and I got on the airplane only because I had four friends around, sort of surrounding me, walking me onto the plane. So I was introduced to these things, well, after running into them at Yale, I was introduced to them by friends who made recommendations.
And what did you find? What was in those Gestalt spaces for you?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the question of mastery, that they seemed to know what they were doing, and I wanted to be a competent therapist, so I thought I should learn what they're doing. And what they were doing seemed powerful and valuable. Hang on just a second, I just noticed my computer is not plugged in, which is never a good idea long term, because we will disappear if I don't plug it in. Yes.
So mastery and
Well, they seemed to know what they were doing, and I thought, I want to hang around this till I know what I'm doing, till I'm, it's not a question of as good as they are, but till I am competent. I would like to feel like a competent therapist, so I should hang around these people. I didn't have the same experience with the psychoanalytic therapists. Most of the supervisors at Stanford, I was not interested in becoming like them when I grew up. I was interested in becoming like the Gestalt therapists when I grew up. They seemed to, but they were lively and uh, even charismatic and helpful, and uh, some of them at least seem to be having fun, like Jack and Cindy. Had a combination of all of that. Jim
So,
Bugental as well.
mhm. So would you say that you've become like them, or are you still in the process of growing up into that? Or
Oh, I think I am reasonably grown up as both as a person and as a therapist, although I still learn things all the time. I I don't do exactly what they did. One of the nice lessons from Jack is he never did the same as anybody else. He never did what he did the month before.
Mhm. So what is it that you do? What would you say is sort of the essence of your work, and how does Gestalt fit into that?
I talk with people and I try to listen to them and be sympathetic and helpful, and sometimes I have a good idea. If I want to be evocative, as opposed to just uh, listen to them and be sympathetic, if I want to be evocative, I am often experiential. I'll suggest they pay attention to their bodies and their imagery. I have a pretty good idea of how to invite a person to be more vivid, and also how to tone things down. So I don't necessarily use the same thing every time, but I have a sense that asking people to, often it's asking people to be anecdotal. Um, tell me a story that comes to mind. Sometimes it will be close your eyes and tell me what you see.
Mm.
Or what do you feel in your body right now?
And has your practice or your projects over the years focused on any particular community or in any special context?
At times, yeah. I mean, for probably 10 or 15 years, I was connected to the various faculty of the Gestalt Institute of San Francisco, and then I taught for Lou Gray at California Institute of Integral Studies for more than a decade. I taught the residentee group or process group or whatever you want to call it at Stanford, and also at San Mateo County residency program. So there were connections there.
So to do with teaching.
Yeah, although there was a time that those of us who had a connection to the Gestalt Institute of San Francisco were meeting monthly and talking about, I think Lou Gray held the state, I'm not sure whether it's a license or the incorporation papers, since she had to file something every year, and she wanted everybody's help in maintaining this and whether eventually and whether it should be maintained.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm wondering, what you would say some challenges that you have come up against might have been, specifically sort of in the Gestalt area. Either in
well, the most
practicing
obvious
or
in what?
Either in practicing or in other aspects of Gestalt. What was the obvious one?
Two of them come to mind. One is that people in the Bay Area are not that interested in it the way they were in the 60s and 70s. I think there's more interest in other parts of the world that has come up, but it's diminished at least in the Bay Area. I just don't get people calling who are interested in it. The second thing is that it became hard to run a group for a Gestalt type group for either for psychology trainees or psychiatry trainees. I think sometime in the 80s, because people didn't want to be that personal. They didn't want to reveal a lot about themselves, and they, maybe correctly, got a sense that a professional setting was not a great place to reveal a lot. So what could be done in a stranger group was a lot more than could be done in a professional group.
It's interesting, that differentiation.
There's, I don't remember his name, it may be Brown. There was a guy at UC Santa Barbara who ran the psychiatry residency training program resident group as a Gestalt group for at least 20 years. And everybody knew that. Everybody who came to the residency came sort of for that. And I thought, well, why don't I just do it at Stanford, whatever. But they didn't come to Stanford for that, and increasingly less so. There might be a little more interest now in that. People are starting to get more openly interested in psychedelics again. And there certainly was a big overlap between psychedelics and Gestalt in 1970. And so, as well as psychedelics and meditation. So with the renaissance of interest in psychedelics, people may get a little more interested in Gestalt.
Is that another area of interest of yours, or just happened to be going on at the same time?
I mean, sort of. I mean, anybody who was anybody in 1970, there were the beer drinkers and there were the mushroom acid people, and everybody I knew, I hung out with, was of the mushroom acid persuasion, not the beer persuasion.
Okay. So this is actually, I would like to hear some anecdote. If there is a particular story that has stayed with you about any aspect of your experience, but particularly if something comes to mind related to your Gestalt experiences. Something that was particularly satisfying or enjoyable, or what was the most fun? I don't know.
Hmm. Well, it may be because of what we were just talking about, but the first thing that comes to mind was um, Jack Downing inviting us all to a house in Marin. Um, I suppose I don't name it, um, but not related to the Gestalt community. Just somebody let us use her house and participated and um, giving us all ketamine, and which again is like you couldn't something you couldn't talk about for 40 years, but now people are saying, "Oh, how great it is!" So that was just a wonderful um, experience to do that in a training context. Like Jack was very much, well, look what we have here. Here we have um, a lot to learn. Let me recommend it to you should you happen to be interested. Who wants to show up? It was great.
So ketamine is part of a training session. That's interesting.
Well, sort of. It's like you're all in my training group if you want. There's a bonus activity on Saturday in Marin. You don't have to come, but you can.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds very much in the spirit of the experiment, right?
Yeah.
And what did you take away from that?
Don't remember.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, I remember an experience from the next time I took ketamine, but not from that time.
Okay. So I also wondering, from your perspective, where do you think Gestalt could be going? Or do you think it's just going to fade out as people lose interest? Or what do you think can happen with it now?
I'm not up on that. I don't know. Again, there's not a lot happening in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to national conferences and Western conferences for many years, but after a while I went when Lou asked me to go, but I haven't been in 20 years, so I don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I hear again, I see lists like yours and think, oh, hundreds of people, good for them. But I don't know what's going on.
That's fair. What about yourself going forward? What kind of plans or projects do you have coming up?
You mean professionally?
Professionally, or I don't know, artistically or personally, or anything that you'd like to share?
I'm hoping to get good enough on electric guitar to play with my son, who's a professional keyboardist. And after 40 years of hoping to, I can now play several Jimi Hendrix songs and have them sound half decent. Actually, pretty good if I don't say so myself. So at this point, it's can I improvise rather than just memorize and play along. Planting lots of roses and seeing which ones take and want to grow around here. I hope we all get to go to the North Shore of Oahu in July, which will depend on whether my son's wife is busy and whether my daughter Laura has a trial she has to lawyer. But it's looking like we'll get to go, so that's exciting. We haven't gone away on vacation in a while.
Well, I hope you get away. I hope you get a chance. Kind of hope everybody gets to do things they haven't been able to do
Exactly.
for a while.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I um, hope this next Elmore Leonard book I'm listening to when I run is as good as the last one.
These sound pretty fairly in the moment plans, right? Things you are just enjoying right now.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I'm going to, I have to remember, I'm going to email my son and his wife and ask if they want to come down tomorrow to watch a movie. And if they don't, I'll email Lou Gray and see if she wants to come over and watch a movie.
Well, if you're emailing Lou, ask her if she wants to interview with me. I've been chasing her for months.
Is she not answering?
No, Cindy was after her too, but she hasn't answered. So we'll see. I hope she's feeling well. But in terms of this, I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would like to add, anything else that's come up, or a new layer of yourself which has come to your awareness as we've been speaking, or
No, the thing I said about Cindy, I've thought in other contexts too. I was on the East Coast for the wedding of a niece, my wonderful niece Emily, like 4 years ago, and I saw an old friend from college time, and we were talking about what was going on then, and my reaction was, I had no idea what was going on in her life. She was telling me about all these interesting and troubling relationships and interactions, and it was like, I didn't ask and she didn't confide. I apologized to her for that, and she said, nobody talked about those things when we were 20 years old. She said, don't worry about it. It is actually one of the reasons why I went into psychiatry after getting an MD, is to be better at talking to people and listening to them. And so I feel I wish I just had a straightforward conversation with so many people 40 years ago, like I can now, but didn't then. Didn't know how to then.
Well, that's very similar to what has me having these conversations. The two people I'd hoped to have them with died before I started the project. So I thought, all right, that's it. I'm just going to start talking to people.
Good idea.
Seems to be. I don't know. It's got us here. So
no, I appreciate your taking the time to do it.
No, thank you. So is it okay for you if we leave this session here for now?
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you.